He tried to cheat me, but I have none of this.
Jesus! Here comes Camel.
That's enough, right?
The road to the rear of the Royal Scots Museum, this leads us to the Edinburgh Castle prisons of war. Now these buildings weren't built as prisons, these are just the castle vaults, which are getting on for about 600 years old now, and these were hastily converted into prisons during the time of the Napoleonic Wars and also during the American Wars of Independence. It was always sailors who were held prisoner here, so any ships that were captured at sea would be brought down to the port of Leith there, and then the men would be transferred from Leith up here to the castle. During the American Wars of Independence or the American Revolutionary Wars, I wrongly assumed that all the fighting took place on American soil, so I was staggered to learn that American warships almost succeeded in capturing Edinburgh's port of Leith. Now I should point out here, in those days the American Navy was led by a man called John Paul Jones. He was actually a Scot whose family came from Leith, so he would know his way around these waters quite well. So anyway, these American ships, they would cross the Atlantic, they would then dock in countries like France or Spain, who the Americans were allied with, where they could restock, rearm, and then they would launch raids on the British coastline with the sole intention to destroy as much of the British Navy as possible. So as well as American prisoners down here, there would have also been those on the American side. So that would mean there would be French, Spanish, Dutch and Irish. And at one point there was over 1,000 prisoners in these vaults. So down there you'll be able to see a recreation of how they would have looked during those days. You'll be able to see the daily rations the men were given. And may I just ask, are there any Americans on this tour? Oh, quite a few, right. Well, of particular interest to you, you'll find that they've preserved the original wooden doors from those days. And on one of the doors you'll be able to see where an American prisoner has spent some time engraving a very early depiction of the American Stars and Stripes flag. So there's a lot of fascinating, interesting history to see and read in those prisons. Make sure you don't forget about them on your way back down. May I just add that all the prisoners down there were very well looked after. I'd now like to tell you all about the oldest building, and this is it right over here, St Margaret's Chapel. Now, as well as being the oldest building in the castle, it's actually also the oldest building in the city of Edinburgh, and this chapel was built in the year 1130. Now, this was built by King David I of Scotland. It was originally the lower part of a Norman tower, and he dedicated it to his mother, Queen Margaret, who later after her death was canonised and became Saint Margaret. So this was used as a working Royal Catholic chapel well into the 1500s, and in the early 1900s 5 stained glass windows were installed depicting St Margaret, St Andrew, St Columba and St Ninian. The 5th window, instead of being another saint or religious figure, happens to be William Wallace with sword in hand, and I must admit to you, I don't get the connection between Wallace and all these saints. But nevertheless, I'm pleased to say this is still a working chapel for all faiths. We'll have 2 or 3 weddings and christenings every week. In fact, there was just a wedding here about an hour ago. Very popular with Scottish fathers of the bride, probably because it only seats 20 people, and that way they can keep the wedding numbers down. So it's only thanks to Robert the Bruce that whoever got married here today could do so in the chapel. And right behind me here, we have the Great Hall. The Great Hall was built in 1511 during the reign of King James IV of Scotland. But once again, thanks to the Victorian age, a decision is taken that the building should be returned to its original use as a working Great Hall. Now, the first thing you'll notice when you step inside is that they never tried to reproduce the 1511 look, so there are no tapestries hanging from the walls. They've just given it a very typical Victorian, almost Gothic style makeover. Almost looks like an armoury with weapons around the room, and to me it should have been used in at least one of the Harry Potter movies, as it just has this magical quality about it. Now, when you're inside, make sure and take a look up at the roof. It's probably the most impressive part of the hall. It's called a hammer beam roof. There are no nails used in its construction, and it's basically held together with thousands of wooden pegs. Wonderful piece of engineering, probably built and designed by Scottish shipbuilders, because it really just looks like the upturned hull of a boat. Now, I'm pleased to say the Great Hall still sees a lot of high profile use, and to this day it is still used for government functions and royal and state occasions as well. Now over to the east we have the Royal Palace. This dates from the early 1600s, and the door at the bottom of the clock tower, that leads to the Crown Room, and in the Crown Room you'll find the Scottish Crown Jewels, and these are Britain's oldest surviving set of Crown Jewels. But if you'd like to walk through an exhibition that will tell you more about the history of the Crown Jewels, enter just round the corner there. But just let me tell you briefly about the Crown Jewels. They comprise of two papal gifts to King James IV of Scotland, a sceptre and a sword. And the crown that you'll see up there dates from 1540. This was the crown of King James V of Scotland. He had it refashioned from an earlier crown, which we believe contained gold from the crown of Robert the Bruce. The first time this crown was used in a coronation was in 1543 for the coronation of Mary Queen of Scots. Now beside the crown jewels you'll see a lump of stone. Not particularly impressive to look at, but it means an awful lot to us Scots. It's the Stone of Scone, also known as the Stone of Destiny. And the Stone of Destiny is an ancient Scottish coronation stone that dates back to around the 9th century. And in those days, Scottish kings would sit on this stone to be crowned, usually in an outdoor ceremony, and that would symbolise the union between the king, the land, and the people of the land. And these ceremonies always took place in Scone Abbey in Perthshire, roughly 30 miles north of Edinburgh. So when the day comes for Charles to finally get to become king, the stone will leave the glass cabinet and once again see the light of day. Now as you leave the Crown Room and come down the steps, if you take a left turn past the small gift shop, you'll arrive in the royal apartments. There you'll see the rooms that Mary Queen of Scots occupied during her stay here at Edinburgh Castle. And in the corner of the main chamber or main bedroom, you'll find a very small room. Now this is probably the most important room in the castle. It's called the birthing room, and this is the room that Mary Queen of Scots chose to give birth to her son James in 1566. And James goes on to become King James VI of Scotland, and then with the death of Queen Elizabeth I of England in 1603, James also goes down to England and becomes King James I of England, the first king to rule England, Scotland and Ireland at the same time. So tiny little room, but packed with history, so make sure and step inside before you leave here. And now at this point it's time for me to let you all go and explore. So a big thanks to you all for coming along. I wish you all a happy visit to the castle and to Edinburgh, and thanks a lot for your company over the last 30 minutes. Have a great day.
Be sure to subscribe for more Scotland in 4K videos. I publish a new video every week. Have you been to the location featured in this video? Perhaps you'd like to leave a comment for other visitors. Just do so in the section below. Finally, if you'd like to watch more 4K videos, just select one of the thumbnails. Thanks for watching, see you again.